Before we get into it, yes, the spooky stories aren't going anywhere. But when you spend your anime cons handing out ribbons, stickers, little charms, you'd be amazed what people tell you. I've heard anime con stories that are scarier than half the ghosts on this channel. So welcome to my new series, Anime Con Horror Stories. Today's episode of Anime Con Horror Stories is all about elevators, because apparently those things become lawless zones the second a con starts. Story 1. The Hug That Broke the Armor. So this happened on Saturday afternoon during the peak crowd rush. I was cosplaying a character with these shoulder pauldrons I'd spent literal weeks 3D printing, sanding, priming, and painting. They were my pride and joy. I get into the hotel elevator with maybe 6 other con-goers. Pretty normal crowd. Then this dude in a giant plush kigurumi turns around, sees my cosplay, gasps like I'm his long-lost sibling, and before I can stop him, he bear hugs me. Full squeeze, full body weight, no hesitation. I hear the crack before I feel it. One of my pauldrons splits right down the middle like a cracked shell. He freezes, looks at the broken piece on the floor, then says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I try again? Like, softer?" Everyone in the elevator collectively inhaled. We rode the next couple floors in dead silence while I held my broken armor piece like a fallen comrade. Story 2. The Guy Who Rode the Elevator Just to Cry. Every time I used the hotel elevator, I kept seeing the same dude, dressed as Deku, standing right in the middle. The doors would close and he'd immediately start softly sobbing, like deep emotional crying. But here's the weird part. He didn't get off. He didn't get on with anyone. He was already in there. He rode up and down for nearly an hour, crying in complete silence except for the sniffles and shirt wiping. At one point, someone asked, "Hey, are you okay?" He just said, "I'm building emotional stamina for my photo shoot." Then the doors opened, a group left, and he stayed inside, crying. Story 3. The Corner Cloak Man. This one messed with me for a full day. My friends and I step onto the elevator and there's a guy in this huge black cloak, hood up, standing in the back corner facing the wall. Not moving, not talking, just facing the corner like he's being punished. We think he's doing a bit. Fine. But when we get off on our floor, I glance over my shoulder, and he gets off too. Except he doesn't walk away. He steps into the hallway, waits for the doors to close, then gets back inside. We saw him 3 more times across the weekend. Different elevator, same position, same cloak, always facing the wall. To this day, I don't know if it was a cosplay, a social experiment, or a man trying to become hotel furniture. Story 4. The Shoulder Massage Without Consent. I was on my way back to my room with a bag full of overpriced convention snacks. The elevator was packed, like 8 of us squeezed in. Suddenly I feel hands, not light tapping, full palm, kneading my shoulder. I whip around, and this guy says, "You look tense, I'm certified." He was not certified. He was not anything close to certified. I said, "Please don't touch me," and he responded with, "It's part of my character." Bro, no character requires that. I got out 2 floors early and walked the rest of the way just to get away. Story 5. The Girl Who Would Not Break Character. A girl dressed as a yandere character stepped into the elevator right after me. Cute cosplay, lots of detail, the doors close. She turns her head slowly, like horror movie slowly, stares directly at me and whispers, "You're not going anywhere." I laugh, thinking she's joking. She doesn't blink. At the next floor, someone else gets in. She repeats it. Same tone, same whisper. She had said it to every single person who entered. Nobody corrected her. We all just stood there, avoiding eye contact, praying she'd get off. When she finally left, someone immediately said, "What anime was that from?" No one knew. Story 6. The Oversized Prop Catastrophe. I was in cosplay with delicate fabric pieces, so I was already terrified of tight spaces. The elevator door opens and this guy forces his way in with a foam spear larger than him. The end of it immediately smacks me in the ribs. He says, "Sorry, it has its own personality." Every time the elevator stopped, the spear swung, like it was purposely targeting new victims. He hit a guy eating Takis, someone's wig, a dude's camera, and me again. Someone finally said, "Can you hold it still?" His answer, "No, that's against the lore. Sir, please, your lore is hurting us." Story 7. The Badge Flipper. This one was just invasive. A guy gets in wearing a lanyard full of con buttons. He stands next to me, looks at my badge, and without saying a word, flips it up to see my name and schedule. I yank it back and he says, "Oh, I'm just scouting panels, seeing what people are into." Then he tries to do it to someone else, like he was a TSA agent of nerd culture. One girl slapped his hand away. He acted offended, like we were being rude. He got reported later that day. Story 8. The Wig Snatcher, Accidental. This one was actually more shocking than scary. The elevator jolts a little between floors. Totally normal. A guy next to me loses his balance and reaches out for something to grab. He grabs my wig. Not my shoulder. Not the rail. My wig. It comes clean off. He's just holding it in his hand like a dead possum. The elevator goes silent. He panics, shoves it back on my head backwards and says, "I'm so sorry I panicked." I fixed it in the hallway while two people pretended not to watch. Story 9. Con Hug. So, I guess this is a common problem at cons. I'm dressed as a character with a soft EVA foam chest plate. It's flexible but not bulletproof. The elevator is crowded when this girl in a giant mascot-style suit spots me and says, "Oh my God, we match." Before I even react, she body checks me in what I think was meant to be a hug. My chest plate crunches like a potato chip. Then she says, "Oops, foam's durable, right?" It was not. Story 10. Chainmail Guy Gets Stuck. A guy in full chainmail, which must have weighed 40 pounds, squeezes into the elevator with me and 3 others. When the doors close, everyone hears a metallic shk sound. His chainmail sleeve is caught in the elevator door. He tries to tug it free, but it's like the door is now holding his hand hostage. He sighs and says, "Man, this happens at every con." We had to reopen the doors twice to finally free him. Someone clapped. He bowed, very in character. Story 11. The Random Screamer. This one still haunts me. I get on the elevator with a handful of people. As soon as the doors shut, a girl in a fox kigurumi screams, "Jump scare." Everyone jumps. She giggles. Next floor. More people get in. Doors close. She screams again. By the 4th round of this, nobody would get on if they saw her inside. She had a whole queue of people waiting for the next one. Story 12. The Overshare at Lightspeed. The elevator is going from floor 1 to floor 10. Long ride. The guy next to me holding a body pillow turns and says, "Yeah, so my ex cheated on me during Anime Boston last year." And he proceeds to tell me, and everyone trapped with us, his entire dating history, complete with names, dates, and what each fight was about. We got off on floor 7 just to escape. He shouted after us, "Wait, I didn't get to the breakup part." Sir, that was the breakup part. Story 13. The Drifting Body Pillow. This happened the same night. The elevator was slightly uneven, causing things on the floor to slide a bit. A guy brought in a giant waifu pillow, like 6 feet tall. Every time the elevator shifted, the pillow would slide across the floor and brush someone's ankle. People kept yelping because it felt like something crawling. Someone finally said, "Your, lady is attacking people." He grabbed it like a firefighter rescuing a child. Story 14. The Naruto runner in a coffin box. A teenager dressed like an Akatsuki member had this long cardboard prop box shaped like a coffin. He claimed his character teleported with it. He kept insisting on standing in Naruto run pose inside the elevator while holding the box. Every stop, he'd wobble. The box would hit someone's foot. He'd whisper, "Ow," but refuse to break character. At floor 4, he finally admitted, "I'm so dizzy, please hold the box." We carried his cosplay coffin out for him like pallbearers. Story 15. The Wig Snatch. I was wearing a very cute, very stylized, bright pink wig. A girl behind me pokes it and says, "Is that heat resistant?" Before I can answer, she full-on grabs a handful like she's testing yarn. I squeak. She says, "Sorry, I'm a cosmetology student." Someone else muttered, "No, you're not." She got off at the next floor looking offended, as if we had violated her. But story 16. The moaning warm-up guy. A guy in a tank top with scars painted all over starts doing vocal warm-ups in the elevator. But not like singing, more like anime battle screams. People kept asking if he needed medical help. He'd just wave his hand and say, "Nah, practicing for my AMV skit." He nearly split someone's eardrum on floor 14. Story 17. The Clinger. This woman in a frilly-made cosplay stepped very, very close to people. Every stop, she'd reposition herself so she was standing inches in front of a new person, like breathing distance. Someone politely asked, "Hey, could you give us a bit more space?" She looked confused and said, "Oh, I thought this was part of the vibe." "Ma'am, what vibe?" Story 18. The Takis Disaster. A dude eating an open bag of Takis, why in the elevator, why, tries to adjust his backpack. He accidentally flings half the bag into the air. Bright red dust rains like cursed confetti. Everyone scrambles to avoid getting it on their cosplays. One guy screams, "Not my white cloak!" When the elevator stops, a trail of Takis leads out like someone dropped spicy breadcrumbs. Story 19. The Armor Adjuster. This guy in full mech cosplay had pieces held on by magnets. Every time the elevator stopped, another magnet detached and shot onto the floor with a loud clack. People kept yelping as armor pieces slid across the floor like Roombas. After a few floors, he was practically shedding. He finally said, "This is my first build. Please don't judge me." We did not, but the elevator did. Story 20. The Drunk Miku Incident. Oh boy, this one is legendary. It's 1 a.m. A Hatsune Miku cosplayer, full wig, twin tails nearly to her knees, is swaying side to side in the lobby. She steps onto the elevator with me and 2 other people, holding a plastic cup of something neon. Doors close and she immediately says, "I'm not drunk, I'm just vocally enhanced." Then she tries to press the button for her floor, but misses 3 times. She turns to me and whispers, "Can you press 6 for me? My hands are too anime." Halfway up, she suddenly gasps and says, "Oh no, I forgot my leaks," and tries to get off at the wrong floor. Someone gently guides her back inside. When we finally reach her stop, she dramatically throws one hand out and declares, "I must go. My people need me." She immediately walks into the wall. We made sure she got to her room safely. Story 21. The Guy Who Treated the Elevator Like a Confessional Booth. I get into the elevator late at night, like almost 2 a.m. I'm exhausted, half in costume, half in pajamas. Then this guy steps in wearing a cloak made of what looked like homemade fake fur. He presses a random floor, and as the doors close, sighs dramatically. Then he looks at me and says, "I need to tell someone something." anyone. I try to look busy on my phone. He continues anyway. I ate 6 churros today. 6. I'm afraid of what they're doing to me internally. He stares at the display screen like he's waiting for divine judgment. When we hit his floor, he whispers, "Thanks for listening. You've saved a life tonight." I didn't even say a word. Story 22. The sudden unwanted photo shoot. So I'm in a simple casual cosplay, nothing extravagant. A group steps into the elevator with me. One guy yells, "Wait, is that Madoka Konami?" Before I can say yes or no, they all surround me in the tiny elevator and start snapping rapid-fire photos like I'm a celebrity walking a red carpet. I'm pinned to the back wall with 3 phones inches from my face. One girl says, "Turn your head like this," while grabbing my chin. The doors open on my floor and I bolt out. I hear someone yell, "No, stay there." I did not. Story 23. The guy eating soup out of a hotel coffee cup. A dude walks into the elevator holding a steaming hotel coffee cup, except it doesn't smell like coffee. It smells like ramen broth. He takes a sip. A noodle slides out of the cup and down his chin. Someone politely says, You okay?" He nods. "I ran out of bowls." At floor 7, the elevator jerks and a splash of broth goes flying onto someone's leggings. The dude just says, "Whoops," and keeps drinking. Who eats broth in an elevator? Story 24. The cosplayer who thought everyone was in her troupe. A girl dressed in a very dramatic magical girl outfit steps inside and immediately strikes a pose. Then she points at each of us, strangers, and says, You're the healer. You tank. You, comic relief." Someone tries to clarify, "We're not." She cuts them off. We are about to embark on a journey. Then she attempts to lead a choreographed anime opening routine in the elevator. We did not participate. She looked genuinely offended when the doors opened and we walked out. Story 25. The guy who thought he was stuck in a time loop. This was at a huge con, like a bunch of floors in the hotel I was staying at across from it. I forget how many floors exactly there was, though. I get on at the bottom floor. A guy's already inside, staring at the door. Doors close. He goes, "Okay, now don't do it again." I don't ask. Elevator stops at halfway to top middle floors. Doors open. No one's there. He groans, "No, it's starting again." He rides with me until the top floor. Doors open with no one there. He dramatically clutches his wig and says, "I knew it, I'm in a time loop." I think he was just sleep-deprived, but honestly, he had me questioning reality. Story 26. The winged cosplayer who knocked off a hat. This guy had these enormous feathered wings, really beautiful work. Except they were so wide that every time he turned even slightly, they bulldozed whoever was next to him. A guy in a Pikachu kigurumi was standing beside him. The wing clipped him and knocked his hood back. Pikachu guy looks up and goes, "Dude." Wing guy just says, "Sorry, they have a mind of their own." They did not have a mind. He just refused to stand still. Story 27. The person who thought it was an escape room. We get into an elevator that's moving slower than usual. Someone jokes, "Man, feels like we're trapped." The girl dressed as some mystery game character gasps and goes, "Wait, maybe there's a clue here." She starts inspecting. The ceiling panel, the buttons, the mirror, the floor tiles, people's pockets. She even said, "Sir, can you lift your foot?" because she thought there'd be a puzzle tile under it. We were not in an ARG, we were in a Hilton. Story 28. The guy who grew up in a barn, apparently. A group of us gets in the elevator. As soon as the doors start closing, this one dude in sweatpants shoves his hand between them. The doors violently reopen. Someone says, "Dude, don't do that, it's dangerous." He laughs and says, Nah, I stop doors like this at work. Someone else asks, "Oh, where do you work?" He proudly answers, "A feed store." So apparently this man wrestles barn doors for fun. Story 29. The one who tried to eat in a fursuit. A full fursuiter steps in holding a cup of boba tea. The straw is bending because their head can't line up with it. They keep trying, missing every time. Tea just dribbles onto the fursuit chin. Someone says, "Do you want a hand?" The fursuiter shakes their head adamantly. "No, I practiced this." After a couple floors, they finally hit the straw. The entire elevator cheered. Then they choked a little, and everyone panicked. Story 30. The elevator emergency meeting. I get on the elevator late afternoon, arms full of Artist Alley prints. Two people in casual cosplay step in behind me, followed by a guy in a bright red hoodie holding a megaphone. The doors close. Without warning, the guy slaps his hand on the elevator rail and yells, "Emergency meeting!" Everyone jumps. He raises the megaphone like he's about to blow it, but thankfully doesn't. He points at a random guy in the corner wearing a simple hoodie and says, "You look SUS. What task are you doing?" Hoodie guy blinks slowly and goes, "I'm going to my room?" Megaphone dude gasps like he solved a murder. That's exactly what someone pretending to do a task would say. The rest of us stand there, trapped, while he interrogates each person. "What floor are you going to?" "Why that floor?" "Are you faking a cosplay assignment?" Every answer, no matter how normal, he responds with, Suspicious. When the doors open on his floor, he dramatically points at us and says, "I'll be watching you." He steps out, megaphone still raised. The doors close. Everyone exhales at the same time. A girl whispers, "I don't even like that game," and we all silently ride the rest of the way pretending none of that happened. Story 31. The man who tried to iron his cosplay. In the elevator, I step in and instantly smell burning fabric. A guy is standing in the corner holding a travel-sized iron plugged into a portable battery pack. He's pressing the iron against the hem of his cloak inside the elevator. A girl asks, "You're ironing right now?" He goes, "Yeah, there's no plug in the hallway, this is faster." The iron hisses, he lifts it, and there's a perfect brown scorch mark on his costume. He sighs and says, "Well, that's character progression now." Story 32. The elevator therapist. The doors close, and this woman immediately says, "Okay, scale of 1 to 10. How emotionally stable are you right now?" No context, no introduction. She keeps going down the line, asking every single person, "What's one thing you're proud of? What's one thing you're scared of? What's your deepest desire?" She nods thoughtfully, then gets off at a random floor like nothing happened. We all stood there silently, holding our trauma. Story 33. The man with the squeegee. A guy wearing a hotel housekeeping badge, but definitely not a hotel employee, gets on holding a window squeegee. He announces, "Elevator cleaning time," and starts squeegeeing the mirror while all of us are still inside. One girl asks, "Are you allowed to do that?" He replies, "No, but they do need help." He gets off on floor 3 and walks away with the squeegee still in hand. Story 34. The girl who pretended to be an NPC. A girl dressed in medieval cosplay stands in the middle of the elevator, hands clasped, staring forward. Every time someone enters, she says, "Greetings, traveler. Press your desired floor." If you press a button, she nods and says, "Quest updated." If you don't respond, she says, "You lack the spirit of initiative." She never moved or changed expression. When the doors opened on her floor, she bowed and walked out like she was returning to a village. Story 35. The guy who took off his shoes. Dude walks in wearing a complicated 3-layer costume. immediately takes off his shoes and socks, like he just starts peeling them off in front of all of us. Someone says, "Bro, please don't." He says, "My feet are boiling. This is life or death." He fans his feet with his con schedule. We all suffered together. Story 36, the uninvited prop repair expert. I'm holding a prop axe with a tiny crack in the handle, barely noticeable. A stranger steps in, takes one glance, and loudly says, "Oh no, your seam is failing." He grabs the axe out of my hands without asking and starts examining it like it's a museum artifact. He says, "I have glue in my room. Come with me," I say. "I'm okay, really." He insists. He even tries convincing 2 other people that their props are flawed too. He gets off 3 floors early, muttering about standards. Story 37, the silent raver. A girl in full cyberpunk neon clothing enters. No music is playing. But the second the doors close, she starts dancing, like full rave choreography, waving her arms, spinning, popping, locking, but without any sound. Everyone tries to avoid getting hit. When the doors open, she stops instantly, smiles politely, and walks out. No explanation. Story 38, the guy covered in stickers. This guy is covered in stickers from head to toe, like his entire shirt is plastered with them. He steps inside and without asking starts gently placing stickers onto random people's sleeves. A shiny star, a chibi mascot, a smiling sun, a tiny ferret saying "good job." He doesn't say a word. When he steps out, he whispers, "Now you're part of the clan," and leaves. The Story 39, the attempted group sing-along. A girl walks in holding a portable speaker. She hits play and a popular anime opening blares at full volume. She yells, "Everybody, sing!" Nobody sings. She yells again, louder this time. "Come on, it's tradition!" The elevator doors open on the next floor and she storms out mumbling, "This con has no team spirit." Story 40. The person who tried to show everyone their art. A guy with a giant sketchbook gets on. He immediately flips it open like a traveling salesman. "Do you want to see my OCs?" He starts showing everybody pages of dramatic anime-style characters. Not bad art, just incredibly pushy. He keeps turning pages even when people say, "Oh, that's cool," hoping that's enough. It never is. The second the elevator stops, everyone escapes like it's on fire. Story 41. The Fruit Cup Fiasco. A girl is eating one of those sealed fruit cups, the kind with too much liquid inside. She tries to peel off the lid. It resists. She keeps pulling. It pops open and sprays sugary fruit juice on all of us. She gasps and says, "Oh no, oh no, this is worse than the ramen incident." Nobody asked about the ramen incident. She apologized 20 times before running off on the next floor. Sticky disaster. Story 42. The one who thought he was the operator. A man in a blazer and tie gets on, even though he's clearly a con attendee. He stands by the button panel and says, "I'll handle the floors, everyone." People start calling out numbers like he's a maitre d'. He presses them with ceremony, nodding like he's performing a sacred duty. When he reaches his floor, he steps out and says, "Thank you for riding with me." All of us instinctively said, "Thank you," back. Story 43. The girl who wouldn't stop practicing her lines. A girl in cosplay walks in holding a folded script. As the elevator rises, she keeps loudly rehearsing dramatic anime dialogue. "No, brother, you can't control my destiny. I'll protect this realm even if it costs me everything. Leave me, and never look back." Everyone stands silently while she performs an entire soliloquy. She walks out mid-monologue when the doors open. She didn't even finish the scene. Story 44. The person who thought the elevator was a changing room. Someone walks on carrying pieces of armor. They're clearly running late. Halfway between floors, they start putting the costume on, strapping, clipping, buckling. By floor 5, they had one shin guard on, half a chest plate, a glove, a belt, and were halfway into a wig cap. People were helping hand them parts like pit crew. They ran out the doors, fully suited up, and screamed, "Thank you, team." Story 45. The person who just brought a bird. A guy walks in holding a small travel cage. Inside it, a parrot at an anime con. We all stare. He says he's emotional support. The parrot says, "Hi, baby," and then wolf whistles. The elevator goes quiet. Then the parrot says, perfectly clearly, "No touching." Everyone nodded. Nobody touched. Story 46. The foam sword duel that nobody asked for. I'm heading back to my room with a slice of con pizza when two teens in shonen cosplay step into the elevator behind me. The doors close. They lock eyes. Without warning, both pull out foam swords and yell, "Final round!" They start swinging inside the tiny elevator, full screaming, dodging, anime sound effects. One sword hits the ceiling panel, the other hits the floor button panel and lights up every button from 2 to the top. We stop on every floor. Every single one. By the time they left, the pizza was cold and I was spiritually exhausted. Story 47. The dude who tried to sell bootleg merch inside the elevator. The elevator is half full when this guy steps in wearing a trench coat like a cartoon dealer. He looks around, nods, and whispers, "Anyone want limited edition pins?" He opens the trench coat. It's lined with clearly bootleg anime pins, some upside down, some spelled wrong. He keeps pitching everyone like a used car salesman. These are rare. This one's misprinted. This one glows in the dark. This one is emotionally cursed. Nobody bites. He gets off eventually and shouts back through the doors, "You missed an opportunity." We did not. Story 48. The girl who tried to teach everyone an anime dance. A girl in full idol cosplay enters with a Bluetooth speaker. The doors close, she taps the speaker, and upbeat idol music blasts at stadium volume. She claps and says, "Okay, does everyone know the choreography?" Nobody does. She starts teaching it anyway, shouting step-by-step directions while the elevator lurches between floors. Step left, step right, turn, peace sign, heart pose. She gets mad when people don't keep up. "Come on, this is easy. My grandmother can do this." She storms out when the doors open after a couple floors, music still blasting. Story 49. The guy who wanted elevator. Silence. Like religious silence. A man in monk-like robes enters, closes his eyes and whispers, "This elevator is now a place of quiet meditation." Then he shushes anyone who breathes too loudly. Not talks, breathes. Someone coughed once and he said, "You have disrupted the balance." He gets off 2 floors later, bows deeply and says, "May your journeys be calm." The second the doors close, everyone bursts into laughter. Story 50. The girl holding a mystery box. A girl walks in, clutching a cardboard box wrapped in duct tape. She puts one finger over her lips. "Shh, it can hear you." Everyone freezes. Someone whispers, "What's in the box?" She shakes her head. "You don't want to know." It gets restless. The box shifts slightly. I swear it moves. Everyone tenses. When the doors open on her floor, she picks it up and says, "Thanks for being quiet. You probably saved your lives." She leaves. We never learned what was in the box. Story 51. The elevator fanfiction reader. A cosplayer steps in holding a tablet. She clears her throat dramatically. Then she starts reading aloud. Chapter 12. The Forbidden Kiss. We all stare in horror. It's explicit, like truly explicit. Someone says, "Please no." She holds up a finger to silence them and keeps reading as if we're attending a public book signing. Doors open on her floor mid-smut. She steps out and says, "See you next chapter." We did not. Story 52, The Human Prop Rack. A guy wearing a basic t-shirt steps on with a large group of heavy cosplay friends. Within 10 seconds, he becomes the holder of all things. 2 staffs, a giant sword, a wig stand, 3 backpacks, a shield, a pair of enormous foam boots he's shaking under the weight. Someone says, "Dude, are you good?" He answers, "I wasn't quick enough to say no." When they exit, they take everything and leave him standing empty-handed, traumatized. Story 53. The Silent Animator. A person walks in with a sketch pad and immediately starts drawing every single person in the elevator, very fast, like courtroom sketch fast. Every few seconds they look up at someone, squint, then scribble furiously. When the elevator reaches their floor, they rip the page out, hand it to the group and say, "Your characters now." The drawing is shockingly good, but I don't remember consenting to being immortalized. Story 54. The Dude Who Brought a Whole Pizza Buffet. This man walks in carrying a giant pizza box, a stack of paper plates, a tub of ranch, and a 2-liter soda. He sets everything down and says, "Anyone want some? I ordered too much." People politely decline. He nods earnestly and goes, "Good, more for me." He starts eating slices directly over the box, ranch dripping everywhere as the elevator goes up floors. The smell followed me for the rest of the weekend. Story 55. The Anime Villain Laugher. This guy walks in wearing a dramatic cape and starts practicing his evil laugh. Quiet at first, then louder, then louder. After a few floors, he's doing full maniacal villain cackling that echoes through the elevator. Someone asks, "Can you?" "Maybe not." He smirks, tilts his head and says, "No." Then he leaves on the next floor and the cape swishes perfectly behind him. Story 56. The Girl Who Just Sat Down. Elevator was crowded but manageable. Doors close. This girl, wearing a giant poofy ball gown cosplay, takes one look around and says, "Nah, I'm done." And then she sits, right on the elevator floor. Everyone tries not to step on her dress. She sighs dramatically and says, "Wake me when we reach enlightenment," or floor 6, whichever comes first. We woke her on floor 6. Story 57. The Guy Who Tried to Sense Everyone's Aura. A guy in a vague spiritual cosplay steps in, closes his eyes, and hovers his hands inches away from everyone's faces. He mutters, "Orange aura. Chaotic energy. You're hiding something. Wow, your soul is loud." Someone says, "Please stop." He nods and whispers, "Of course. Your aura said you'd say that." He steps out on his floor backwards. Story 58. The Girl Who Accidentally Summoned a Crowd. A girl walks in wearing an extremely impressive, shiny, magical girl transformation outfit. Everyone compliments her. She panics and says, "Oh no, not again." Before we can ask, the elevator stops on the next floor. 10 people flood in shouting, "I found her!" Apparently they'd been hunting her for a group photo. She screams softly, "Please no," as the doors close and chaos erupts around her. Story 59. The Guy Who Tried to Power Up guy dressed as a famous anime hero enters. He crouches slightly, takes a deep breath, and starts screaming like he's powering up. Loud, like genuinely trying to go Super Saiyan inside the cramped elevator. His voice cracks. He doesn't stop. Someone plugs their ears. Someone else starts laughing. He finishes after a full 20 seconds, panting, and says, "I'm only at 2%. Bro, please." Story 60. The GoPro Chest Cam Guy. A guy steps in wearing a GoPro mounted to his chest, red light blinking. He looks around and says, Don't worry. I'm live streaming for safety. Nobody asked. He narrates everything happening. Entering elevator. Strangers appear friendly. One seems tired. One potentially hostile. Doors closing. Ominous. Someone asks, "Can you turn that off?" He says, "I can't. The viewers need realism." There are no viewers. He's not even connected to Wi-Fi. He gets off on his floor and says, "Good luck. This was riveting content." No, it wasn't. Story 61. The dude who tried to impress everyone with his voice acting. A guy in casual clothes steps in, clears his throat, and says, "Want to hear my anime protagonist voice?" Before anyone can answer, he launches into a monologue so dramatic, so loud, and so badly accented that even the elevator machinery seems embarrassed. He keeps checking to see if we're impressed. We are not. He finishes with, "So, what do you all think?" Everyone stares at the floor until he gets off on his floor. He whispers, "Tough crowd," and disappears. Story 62. The girl who insisted someone was her kin twin. I get into the elevator wearing a somewhat popular character hoodie. A girl gasps, grabs my arm, and says, "Oh, my God, you're my kin. You're literally me." I try to smile politely. She squeezes tighter and says, "You have to take a selfie with me. The universe demands it." Before I can decline, she's already snapping 20 pictures and shouting, "Same energy, same vibes." I got off 2 floors early to escape the spiritual bonding. Story 63. The guy who tried to recruit people for his anime band. He walks in holding a ukulele, not even in cosplay. He says, "I'm forming a weeb band. Anyone here play an instrument? Or could learn by tomorrow?" No one answers. He nods seriously and says, "We're gonna go viral, like Hatsune Miku, but with tax returns." Nobody knew what he meant. He got off on floor 9, humming badly. Story 64. The person doing loud lip-sync practice. A girl steps inside with a full idol wig and starts lip-syncing dramatically into her phone camera. But here's the thing. She isn't playing music. She's just mouthing words to silence and throwing herself against the elevator wall like she's on stage in front of 10,000 people. Someone asks, "Could you maybe not do that in here?" She says, "I need to practice my passion." She gets off on her floor, panting like she just performed a 3-hour concert. Story 65. The dude who did a cringe fake accent. A guy dressed as a fantasy knight walks in, clears his throat, and starts speaking in the worst faux British accent you've ever heard. "Greetings, good sirs and madams." He won't drop it. Someone politely says, "Hey, you don't need to stay in character." He strikes a pose and declares, "It's not a character. I was born this way." His real accent slipped out when he tripped and yelled, "Oh shh." The cringe was lethal. Story 66. The girl with the overly intense cosplay backstory. This girl steps in and immediately begins explaining her original character's tragic backstory. Like instantly, she describes her character's doomed twin, the forbidden prophecy, the 7 realms, the cursed amulet, the betrayal arc, the 14-page lore doc nobody asked, nobody escaped. She followed us out onto the wrong floor, still explaining the political layout of her fictional kingdom. Story 67. The guy who tried to flirt using anime quotes. This man walks in, sees a girl in a cute cosplay, and decides this is his moment. He says with full dramatic inflection, "You remind me of the cherry blossoms that bloom under a blood-red moon." She says, "What?" He continues, "I would protect you with the fire of my soul, milady." She literally turns around and pretends to read the elevator inspection certificate. He tries a third line. "Fate has chosen us to..." Doors open. She bolts. He whispers, "We'll meet again," and gets off alone. Story 68. The guy who tried to sell his fan fiction. A guy with a binder stapled together steps in and says, "Would any of you like to buy my fan fiction? It's only $10. Very emotional, very rare." He starts reading the description on the back like it's a movie trailer. When nobody responds, he tries to slip the binder into someone's tote bag as a sample. They hand it back. He mutters, "Philistines," and exits. Story 69. The girl who did a full TikTok dance routine. She walks in, sets her phone on the elevator rail, hits record and announces, "Nobody move, I'm filming." And then she performs a full 30-second TikTok dance in a packed elevator. She keeps bumping people with her arms and hair. Someone says, "Can you do that outside the elevator?" She responds, "No, the lighting is better in here." When the doors open, she snatches her phone and leaves without acknowledging the crowd she assaulted. Story 70. The guy who tried to make the elevator a panel. This man steps in, claps loudly, and says, "Welcome to my TED Talk about why this anime is the best anime ever created." He doesn't ask, he just starts. He pulls out a printed chart, a slideshow on his phone, and a laminated list of top 10 themes you missed. It's a 5-floor ride. He gets through 7 slides. When the doors open, he bows and says, "Thank you for attending. Next panel is at 3:15. Everyone flees like they're escaping a burning building. Story 71. The guy who wouldn't stop guessing everyone's zodiac sign. A guy in casual cosplay steps in, squints at each of us, and says, "You're definitely a Scorpio. The energy is chaotic." He points at another person. "And you, Virgo, no question." He gets to me and stares way too long before saying, "Sagittarius with unresolved trauma." Everyone collectively blinks. He nods confidently and steps off on floor 10 saying, "My work here is done." It was not. Story 72. The girl who whispered every word she said. A girl walks in holding a plushie. She presses her floor button, then turns to the person next to her and begins to whisper. Not soft talking, actual movie-style whispering. "Are you having a good con?" The person says, "Huh." She whispers louder, "I said, are you having a good con?" Every sentence she says is a whisper, even sorry. Nobody knows why. When the doors open, she bows silently and slips away like a ghost. Story 73. The guy who asked everyone to rate his walk cycle. A guy with a prop staff gets in and says, "Be honest, does this walk look natural?" Then he starts walking back and forth inside the elevator like he's testing video game animations. He keeps asking, "Too stiff? Too bouncy? Too NPC? Does this scream main character?" Someone finally says, "Bro, it screams something." He nods seriously and keeps practicing. Story 74. The person who introduced their plushie, like it was a real human. A person carrying a large stuffed animal steps in. They turn to the group and say, "This is Marshmallow. They're very shy." They proceed to introduce the plushie to each person individually. "This is Brandon. He is tired. This is Lila. She smells nice. This is..." When the doors open, they hold the plushie up and say, "Say bye-bye, Marshmallow." Marshmallow says nothing. We do not ask questions. Story 75. The guy who asked everyone the same strange question. A dude wearing a hoodie with cat ears walks in and immediately asks, "What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten at 3 a.m.? He genuinely expects answers. One person hesitates and says, "Cold pizza?" He nods, takes out a notebook, and writes it down like it's data for a science experiment. He asks the next person the same thing, and the next. Nobody knows why. He gets off on floor 5 whispering, "Good samples." Story 76. The silent stare-down cosplayer. A woman dressed as a very stoic anime character steps in. She stands perfectly still. No blinking, no shifting, just intense eye contact with whoever happens to glance her direction. Not threatening, just weirdly studying. Someone whispers, "Is she okay?" Without breaking eye contact, she says, "My character does not emote." Doors open. She steps out without blinking. Story 77. The guy who tried to adopt everyone in the elevator. A man with a dad bod and a fanny pack steps in and says, "You're all my children now." Nobody laughs. He continues, "Who wants snacks? Daddy's got snacks." He pulls out granola bars and juice boxes like a mobile field trip chaperone. Everyone declines. He nods and says, "Good. I was testing you. You're responsible." Doors open. He leaves. Nobody speaks. Story 78. The girl who identified everyone's cosplays wrong. On purpose. A girl enters the elevator, points at a Sailor Moon cosplayer and says, "Oh wow, Zelda looks great." She points at a guy in a full armor mech suit. "Ah yes, Cowboy Bebop." She points at someone not even in cosplay. "You, I love your Goku outfit." People gently try to correct her. She refuses. "I know what I saw," she says, stepping off on her floor. Story 79. The guy who took notes on everyone's height. As soon as he enters, he pulls out a tape measure. He doesn't touch anyone, but visually estimates their height and writes it down in a notebook. He mutters numbers like a cryptid researcher. 5'7", maybe 5'8". Subject 3 is slouching. Someone finally asks, "Why are you doing this?" He replies, "Consistency for my comic." Then he leaves without further explanation. Story 80. The girl who asked everyone to pretend they were on a spaceship. A girl walks in with a bunch of LED lights sewn into her jacket. She spreads her arms dramatically and says, "We are now aboard the Starship Radiance. Please choose your roles." Nobody chooses anything. She assigns them anyway. "You're the captain, you're the mechanic, you, science officer." She stands in the middle of the elevator narrating fake spaceship drama. "Captain, we're losing altitude." Doors open on her floor. She salutes and says, "Mission complete." Nobody saluted back. Story 81. The guy who stood too close. A fairly normal-looking guy walks in wearing no cosplay at all, just jeans and a hoodie. The elevator has space, a lot of space, but he stands directly behind me, like inches. I shuffle forward. He shuffles forward too. Someone else coughs awkwardly. He ignores it. When the doors open on his floor, he leans in and whispers, "You walk fast." I wasn't walking. I wasn't moving at all. He just steps out like nothing happened. The story 82. The woman who watched everyone's reflection. A woman in a long coat steps on and immediately turns toward the mirrored wall. But she's not looking at herself. She's staring at everyone else's reflections. Whenever someone moves, she tracks them in the mirror like a security camera. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" She replies without turning, "I see people better this way." She gets off on floor 7 without a backward glance. Story 83. The guy who kept sniffing. Not like a runny nose sniff. Not sick. Actual deliberate sniffing. He'd walk near someone and inhale deeply like he was trying to identify people by scent. Someone finally says, "Dude, stop." He smiles faintly and says, "Just checking if anyone smells familiar." The doors open. He doesn't get off. No one rode with him after that floor. Story 84. The person who wouldn't stop smiling. A person wearing casual clothes but an extremely unsettling smile steps on. Not a happy smile, a fixed smile. They never blink, never change expression, just smiling. Someone finally asks, Everything okay?" They nod once, still smiling. On their floor, they turn around slowly and say, "Thanks for the company," still smiling. The doors close and everyone exhales like they'd been underwater. Story 85. The guy who wanted to guess secrets. A dude dressed in a simple t-shirt walks in and says, "I can tell what each of you is hiding." He points at a random girl. "You're lying to someone." She looks horrified. He points at a guy. "You're afraid you left something important upstairs." He points at me. "You're pretending you're not nervous right now." He gets off without explaining anything. No one talked the rest of the ride. Story 86. The girl who whispered a different name. Every floor. This one still bothers me. A girl in a big hoodie steps in, hood up, head down. When the doors close, she whispers a name. Quietly, hard to hear. At the next stop, she whispers a different name, and again, and again. Someone finally asks, "Are those character names?" She shakes her head. When the doors open on her floor, she looks up for the first time and says, "They're the people I met today." Then she walks out. We all stared at each other, confused. Story 87. The guy who asked a lot of questions about people's rooms. A guy with a camera bag steps in and instantly asks, "What floor are you on? What room number? Who are you staying with? When do you usually get back?" People start giving fake answers. He nods thoughtfully and says, "Good to know." Someone asks why he wants to know. He smiles and says, "Just taking note of my surroundings. Everyone got off 2 floors early." Story 88. The girl who kept touching the elevator walls. She gets in and immediately presses her palms against the walls. All of them, top to bottom. She keeps tracing her fingertips along the seams like she's reading Braille off metal. Someone says, "Are you looking for something?" She softly answers, "I'm making sure nothing has changed." Doors open. She leaves without another word. Nobody asked follow-up questions. Story 89. The guy who watched only one person. A group of us gets in. This dude stands completely still, but he is laser-focused on one single person, not looking around, not glancing, just staring at that one person's face the entire ride. When they shift, he shifts. When they turn away, he leans slightly to keep them in view. On his floor, he steps off, turns back, points at them and says, "I've seen you before." The doors close immediately. Story 90. The person who talked to someone who wasn't there. They step in and stand in the corner facing their right side and start having a conversation with someone only they can see, not like joking. A full, quiet conversation. "I told you not now." "No, they're fine." "You're being dramatic." Stop staring at them. Everyone exchanges nervous glances. When the doors open, they say to the empty space, "Come on, we're getting off," and walk out. The empty space does not. Story 91. The guy who watched everyone's shoes. A man steps in and immediately looks down, not at the buttons, not at the floor, at everyone's shoes. He doesn't look up once, just examines each pair intensely, like he's grading them. After a minute, he mutters, Interesting choices." Someone asks, "What does that mean?" He says nothing. He steps off on the next floor, still staring at shoes. Story 92. The girl who asked for everyone's full names. She gets on holding a notebook and pen, smiles politely, then says, "I'm collecting names for a project. Can everyone share their full legal name, please?" Everyone freezes. Someone laughs nervously and says, No." She frowns, writes something down anyway, and mutters, "I'll figure it out." We all got off early. Story 93. The guy who introduced himself. 3 separate times. This man walks into the elevator and says, "Hi, I'm Kyle." 15 seconds later, as if nothing happened, "Hey, I'm Kyle." Another 10 seconds. "By the way, I'm Kyle." Nobody knows why. Nobody corrected him. We all pretended it was normal. He left without saying a fourth one, which almost made it creepier. Story 94. The person who repeated everything you said. Someone says, "Can you hit floor 2?" This person repeats softly, "Floor 2." Another asks, "Is this elevator slow today?" They echo, "Slow today." Someone whispers, "Why are they doing that?" They repeat, "Why are they doing that?" When the doors open, they step out mid-sentence and vanish. Story 95. The girl who kept turning her head too slowly. A girl steps on, stands perfectly still, and whenever someone speaks, she slowly, so slowly, turns her head toward them. Not her body, just her head. Owl-level rotation speed, no expression, no blinking, just a slow, creepy swivel. At her floor, she snaps her head forward again, bows slightly, and walks out like nothing was odd. Story 96. The man who stood facing the wrong direction. Most people face forward in elevators. This guy? He stands facing everyone else, square on, as if we're his audience. No expression, no small talk, just watching. Someone tries to break the tension. "You okay?" He says, "I like to see people." No further explanation. Doors open, and he leaves without a glance back. Story 97. The woman who complimented people the wrong way. She walks in and immediately starts offering bizarre compliments like, "You look like you keep secrets. I bet your hands are warm. You smile like someone who knows old things. You have the energy of a lost librarian." Everyone quietly tries to step away from her. She leaves on floor 4 and says, "Thank you for letting me observe your auras." Nobody thanked her back. Story 98. The guy who kept checking his watch and then checking everyone else's faces. He enters, checks his watch, looks around the elevator, checks his watch again, looks around again, repeat, every floor, every second. Finally, someone asks, "Are you waiting for something?" He replies, "I'll know it when I see it." Doors open. He gets off. We still don't know what he was looking for. Story 99. The person who tried to guess everyone's room. Number A, quiet person walks in and, without introduction, starts guessing people's room numbers based solely on how they look. "You seem like a 209. You look like a third-floor person. You? Definitely 413. When someone says, "Nope, wrong," they respond, "It will make sense later." Then they get off. Nobody likes when things make sense later. Story 100. The girl who whisper laughed, not normal laughing, not giggling, whisper laughing. No sound except breath. She did it whenever the elevator stopped, whenever someone got on, whenever someone pressed a button. Someone finally asked, "Are you laughing at something?" She grinned and said, "I just like when new people arrive." Nobody made eye contact after that. Story 101. The person who acted like they already knew you. The elevator was mostly empty when I stepped in. Just one person standing in the back, wearing a simple shirt and con badge turned backward so I couldn't read their name. They looked up at me the moment the doors closed and smiled with this soft, knowing expression. Not creepy at first, just oddly familiar. Then they said, "There you are. I wondered when you'd show." I blinked. Sorry, do we know each other?" They laughed, not mocking, but like I'd made a cute mistake. "Oh, you're funny today." That threw me off immediately. They kept watching me with this warm, intimate smile, like we were old friends, or like I'd been late for something important we both understood. I stepped to the opposite corner, trying to be polite. They stepped closer. "Did you change your hair?" they asked casually. "You never told me you'd change it." "I think you have the wrong person," I said. Their smile faded just a little. Not angry, more confused. like I was the one messing up. "Don't be weird," they whispered gently. "You're always joking like this." The elevator kept climbing. Floor, floor, floor. They kept inching closer, eyes bright, almost excited. "I have so much to tell you," they said. "You really should have texted me back last night." My blood ran cold. I had never seen them before in my life. When the elevator finally dinged, I rushed out immediately. They didn't follow, but they leaned forward as the doors started closing, smiling wider than before. And as the gap narrowed, they said softly, "See you tonight." The doors shut. I changed elevators after that. Story 102. The guy eating cold spaghetti. From a Ziploc bag, a dude steps in holding a giant Ziploc full of plain spaghetti. No sauce, no fork. He just reaches in and pulls out handfuls like he's eating popcorn. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" He shrugs and says, "Room microwave is broken." He leaves a single noodle on the floor when he gets off. Nobody picks it up. Story 103. The girl with the mayo packet meal. A girl in cosplay steps in, rips open a mayonnaise packet, and squeezes it directly into her mouth. An entire one. Everyone stares in horror. She sees us staring and says, "What? It's calories." She opens a second packet. Story 104. The guy drinking soup out of a measuring cup. This man steps on holding a giant plastic measuring cup, the kind with numbers on the side. It's filled with broth and floating vegetables. He lifts it to his mouth like it's a soda. Someone whispers, "Is that soup?" He nods and says, "The hotel ran out of bowls." No lid, hot soup. In a moving elevator, a carrot plops onto the floor. Story 105. The girl with the unidentifiable meat. She gets on holding a styrofoam box from an unknown vendor. She opens it. Inside is something meat-like, grayish, shiny, steaming. Someone asks, "What is that?" She says, "I don't know. The guy said it was extra protein." She takes a huge bite. The smell stays for the next 5 floors. Story 106. The guy eating a whole cucumber like a candy bar. No bag, no slice, no seasoning. Just a whole raw cucumber he's munching on like it's a Snickers. Each bite makes a loud crunch that echoes off the elevator walls. Someone asks, "Are you on a diet?" He says, "No, I'm on a journey." He gets off on his floor without elaborating. Story 107. The ramen brick eater. A teen walks in holding a raw ramen brick, dry, uncooked. He sprinkles seasoning on top like fairy dust and starts biting into it like it's a granola bar. Crunches so loud everyone flinches. He smiles proudly and says, "It's con tradition. It should not be." Story 108. The girl with the pocket bacon. She's munching on what looks like strips of bacon, not from a bag, not from a container. She pulls each piece out of her hoodie pocket. Someone says, "Is that safe?" She answers, "No, but it's good." She leaves behind one lonely bacon crumb on the rail. Story 109. The dude drinking pickle juice straight from the jar. He walks in clutching a huge pickle jar like it's a chalice, takes sips of the brine, actual sips. Someone says, "Are you supposed to drink that?" He replies, "I'm replenishing electrolytes." Nobody argues. He offers it to the group. "Anyone want to hit this?" Nobody does. Story 110. The girl eating instant mashed potatoes from a blender bottle. She shakes a blender bottle filled with thick beige mush, opens it, takes a spoon and scoops out instant mashed potatoes like it's a protein shake gone wrong. Someone asks, "Why?" She says, "I didn't pack utensils." The spoon is from the ice cream shop. Then she uses the spoon like a champ. Story 111. The guy with the tuna can. This man walks in, pops open a can of tuna, and starts eating it straight with a plastic fork. The entire elevator fills with the smell instantly. Someone groans. He says, "It's brain food." Someone else mutters, "It's nose punishment." He doesn't stop. Story 112. The girl eating hot sauce packets like candy. She pulls out a handful of Taco Bell hot sauce packets, tears one open with her teeth, squeezes it into her mouth, smiles, then does another, and another. Someone asks, "Is that your lunch?" She shrugs. It's free and it works. She leaves with her tongue visibly red. Story 113. The guy with a Thanksgiving dinner plate. A guy steps in holding a full plate piled with turkey slices, mashed potatoes, stuffing, cranberry sauce. He balances it with one hand like he's on a cooking show. The elevator shudders between floors. The cranberry sauce wobbles like a horror movie effect. Someone says, "Dude, why not use a tray?" He sighs and says, "The hotel ran out. This is a high-risk operation." He makes it to his floor without spilling, but everyone else was sweating. Mound Story 114, the girl with the bento box buffet. She steps on carrying 3 stacked bento boxes, all open. Sushi, rice, fried chicken, pickled vegetables. The smell hits instantly. She sets the stack down on the floor to rearrange her chopsticks. The elevator moves. The top bento slides off like a tragic avalanche of maki. She gasps and says, "No, my dragon roll." Nobody knows where the chopsticks went. Story 115. The dude eating a full steak dinner. This man steps in with a ceramic hotel plate containing a medium rare steak, a baked potato, green beans. He has a fork and a steak knife. Inside the elevator, he cuts into the steak as the doors close. Someone whispers, "Is that safe?" He shrugs. If they didn't want me to eat steak on the go, they shouldn't have conventions. The elevator stops abruptly. The knife nearly flies. Never again. Story 116. The girl carrying a bowl of pho. A girl walks in holding a giant bowl of pho filled to the absolute brim. Steam everywhere. Thin noodles hanging over the edge. Bean sprouts threatening to escape. She apologizes in advance. "Sorry if I spill. My room is on 22. Everyone presses against the walls like she's carrying radioactive soup. The bowl sloshes with every floor. A single cilantro leaf hits someone's shoe. It was tense. Story 117. The family-sized pizza guy. This dude walks in carrying a full family-sized pizza box. Open. He takes slices directly from the box while the elevator climbs. Cheese strings stretch a good 6 inches with each bite. Grease smell fills the entire cabin. At floor 9, he looks at us and says, "You guys want some?" Nobody wants elevator pizza. Story 118. The girl with an entire rotisserie chicken. She steps in with a plastic grocery bag. Inside, an entire rotisserie chicken. No plate, no utensils. She pulls it out with her hands like she's a medieval king. Someone says, "Are you really doing that here?" She rips off a leg and says, "I didn't have time for dinner." Bones go back into the bag, which swings with every movement. People avoided eye contact for all 14 floors. Story 119. The dude with the 3-course meal. This guy comes in balancing a soup bowl, a salad, a plate of pasta, a bread roll, and a glass of lemonade. He is the human version of a precarious Jenga tower. Someone asks, "Why not make 2 trips?" He says, very seriously, "The line for the elevator is too long." He almost drops the soup when a cosplayer steps on. Everyone held their breath the entire ride. Story 120. The girl with a crockpot. Yes, a crockpot. Plugged in, still warm, still sloshing. She's carrying it like an offering bowl from an ancient temple. Someone says, "What's in there?" She lifts the lid. Chilly. The smell hits the whole elevator like a punch. Someone else whispers, "You made chili at a con?" She nods proudly. Saved so much money. Check story 121. The guy with a breakfast feast. Not breakfast to go. A literal breakfast plate with scrambled eggs, sausage, pancakes, hash browns, and syrup already poured. He's stabbing pancakes while the elevator rises. Syrup starts dripping down the side of the plate. Someone whimpers softly. He gets off at floor 14, leaving behind a single piece of sausage that rolled into the corner. Story 122. The girl holding a hot pot broth base. She has a massive metal pot filled with hot broth for a room hot pot. No lid, steam everywhere, smells amazing and dangerous. Someone says, "Is that boiling?" She nods cheerfully. "Only a little." Everyone in the elevator slowly presses against the walls like it's a bomb. She gets off without spilling a drop. A miracle. Story 123. The guy who was literally eating at a table. A guy steps in dragging a folding TV tray table with an entire plate of food already set up. Spaghetti, garlic bread, salad, a can of soda. He sits on the stool he brought. In the elevator. Someone says, "Dude, why?" He says, "Food court was full." He keeps eating until his floor, then drags the table out like this is normal. Story 124. The guy eating a bowl of cereal with milk. A dude steps in holding a ceramic bowl of cereal drowning in milk. He's slurping loudly. Milk is sloshing to the rim. He has no backup plan if this spills. Someone says, "Dude, that's going to go everywhere." He nods and says, "Yeah, but I needed calcium." A Cheerio escapes like a runaway boat. Story 125. The girl with a giant ice cream sundae. Huge waffle bowl. 3 scoops. Hot fudge, whipped cream, sprinkles, a maraschino cherry. In an elevator that's packed. She tries to take a bite, and whipped cream smears on the mirrored wall. Everyone stares. She quietly says, "I didn't think this through." Story 126. The dude eating a plate of ribs. This man is annihilating a full rack of ribs. BBQ sauce everywhere, hands coated, bones piling on the plate. He gnaws a rib clean, drops the bone onto the plate with a wet thud and says, "Sorry if it's messy. I skipped breakfast." Someone mutters, "This is not breakfast." He reaches for another rib. The elevator smells like a smokehouse for days. Story 127. The girl eating a giant turkey leg. You know the kind from Renaissance fairs? Yeah, that, but inside a hotel elevator. She's ripping chunks off like a barbarian queen, grease dripping onto the floor. Someone stares. She just grins and says, "It's keto." Story 128. The dude slurping oysters from the shell. He's got a tray of raw oysters in an elevator at a con. He lifts one, slurps it, and discards the empty shell into a paper bag. The smell hits instantly, like the ocean is dying. Someone whispers, "Please stop." He says, "They're fresh." They are not. Story 129. The girl with spaghetti and red wine. She steps on holding a full plate of red sauce spaghetti, a glass of actual red wine. She twirls noodles, sauce flying like she's painting the elevator red. Someone says, "Why wine?" She says, "I'm pairing." She almost spills the wine when we hit a floor bump. The sauce stain on the wall is eternal. Story 130. The guy eating durian. Durian, the most notorious fruit in the world. He opens a container and the entire elevator fills with the smell of rotten onions and sweet custard. People gag instantly. Someone begs, "Dude, please close that." He shrugs and says, "It's an acquired smell." He is the only person who has acquired it. The story 131. The girl with a bowl of raw eggs. Yes, a bowl of raw eggs, not cracked. Whole eggs floating in water. She taps one on the side of the bowl, cracks it open with her hand, and drinks the yolk like it's a protein shot. Someone stares in absolute horror. She says, "I'm doing a training arc." No one asks for details. Story 132, the dude eating gas station sushi. He pulls a tray of suspiciously warm gas station sushi out of a plastic bag. Shrimp, California rolls, something vaguely brown. He says, "It's fine. It was refrigerated." It was clearly not refrigerated. The elevator hits a bump and a roll falls onto the floor. He picks it up and eats it anyway. Someone gagged softly. Story 133. The girl eating a bowl of chili cheese fries. This thing is overflowing with cheese, chili, onions, jalapenos, the whole messy disaster. She takes a bite, pulls up a huge cheese string, and it stretches across half the elevator like a spider web from hell. Someone steps into it. She apologizes. "Oh, sorry, this dish is interactive." The story, 134, the man with a whole raw onion. He takes out a large raw onion. No knife, no salt, no dip, just bites into it like it's an apple. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The smell fills the elevator immediately. Someone groans. "Why?" He shrugs. "Vitamin C." He takes another enormous bite. Story 135. The guy stretching like he's at the gym. This dude steps in and immediately starts doing hamstring stretches, quad pulls, calf raises, neck rotations. He grunts loudly while touching his toes. Someone says, "You really can't wait until your room?" He says, "Flexibility waits for no one." A foot comes dangerously close to someone's face. Story 136. The girl doing full makeup. She walks in with an entire makeup bag and begins doing a full face. Foundation, contour, lashes, eyeliner, setting spray. She's bouncing with the elevator, smearing eyeliner, redoing it, and hogging the mirror. When the doors open, she sighs and says, "Ugh, this lighting is terrible." She leaves behind a cloud of setting spray. Story 137. The dude practicing his wrestling moves. A guy in a luchador mask steps in, stretches his arms, and starts practicing grapples on the elevator rail. He slams his shoulder into the wall and yells, "Feel my power." Someone says, "Dude, maybe chill?" He answers, "No, my match is in 8 minutes." He then suplexes his own backpack. Story 138. The girl cutting wig bangs. She has scissors. Actual scissors. She starts trimming her wig bangs in the elevator mirror. Plastic hair falls everywhere. She keeps asking strangers, "Is this even?" Everyone lies and says yes. She still keeps cutting. Story 139. The guy practicing a marriage proposal. This dude keeps kneeling, standing, kneeling again, rehearsing lines like, "Will you? No, no, no. Will you? No, too aggressive. You're the only one for me." Cringe. He's sweating like it's opening night for a Broadway show. Someone whispers, "It's not gonna go well." He whispers back, "I know." Story 140. The girl trying to take a bath in a bucket. She steps in holding a plastic bucket full of warm water. She dips a washcloth in and starts wiping her arms like she's doing a sponge bath. Someone says, "Why are you doing that here?" She replies, "The confunk must be stopped." A drop hits the floor. Everyone recoils. Story 141. The guy meditating loudly. He closes his eyes and starts doing deep, explosive breathing exercises. The elevator echoes. Someone tries to hit another floor button and he whispers, "Do not disturb the flow." He leaves, leaving a vibing aura nobody asked for. Story 142. The girl trying to sew a costume. She brings out a full sewing kit and starts stitching a torn cosplay sleeve. The elevator bounces. The needle nearly stabs her and others multiple times. Someone says, "Please don't bleed on us." She says, "I refuse to debut unfinished." The thread gets caught on the rail as she walks out. Story 143. The dude practicing pickup lines. He's got a notebook titled Lines and tries each one on everyone. "Are you a magical girl? 'Cause you've transformed my heart." "No? Okay, next." "Do you believe in fate? Because no? Okay, next." He keeps checking them off like homework. He exits saying, "Progress, good progress." Nobody agrees. Story 144. The girl trying to apply body paint, blue body paint. Thick, wet, smearing everywhere. She paints her arms, then accidentally brushes against the wall, then someone's bag, then her own shirt. Someone begs, "Please stop." She says, "I have a competition in 10 minutes. She leaves, leaving blue fingerprints and tears behind. Story 145. The guy doing parkour. He gets in, looks around, and says, "Perfect practice space." Then he jumps, grabs the rail, kicks off the opposite wall, tries to wall run in a space the size of a closet. Someone screams, "Stop!" He drops down and says, "Fine, you ruined the vibe." He exits on the wrong floor just to demonstrate dominance. Story 146. The guy exercising his tarot cards. A dude gets in, pulls out a deck of tarot cards, and starts energetically shuffling them like a Vegas dealer. Then he fans out 5 cards face down on the elevator floor and says, "I need the energy of this space." Someone says, "Dude, people are trying to get out." He replies softly, "Fate doesn't wait." He refuses to move his cards until his floor. Story 147. The girl doing full vocal warm-ups, not singing, weird throat noises. She's projecting like she's backstage at Broadway. Someone asks politely, "Could you lower the volume?" She smiles and says, "Oh, honey, this is the warm-up." Story 148. The guy trying to tune a violin. He steps in, pulls out an actual violin, places it under his chin, and starts plucking strings and adjusting the pegs like he's prepping for a concert. The elevator jerks slightly. He winces dramatically and says, "My God, this acoustic's nightmare." He tunes through the whole ride, never plays actual music. Story 149. The girl using a lint roller on everyone. She has a giant industrial lint roller and starts rolling it on her own costume. Fine. Then she turns to a stranger. "Hold still, you have fuzz." They say, "No thank you." She says, "It must be done." She tries anyway. Doors open. Everyone flees. Story 150. The guy attempting shadow puppets. This man insists on dimming the lights by blocking the ceiling panel with his jacket. Then he starts making shadow puppets on the wall. A bird, a wolf, something that might have been a crab. He narrates each in a deep voice. This is the raven. This one represents inner turmoil. Everyone regrets riding that elevator. Story 151. The girl trying to apply a temporary tattoo. She pulls out one of those cheap temporary tattoos, licks the back of it. Why? Presses it onto her arm and starts frantically patting it with the tiniest napkin. The elevator bumps. The tattoo slides. She gasps, "No, no, no, don't move, don't move." She tries to hold it in place while the whole elevator vibrates like a washing machine. Tattoo ends up sideways and smeared. She looks devastated. Story 152. The guy practicing an evil villain walk. Not the laugh, not the monologue, the walk. He struts forward, turns slowly, crosses his arms, spins his cape dramatically, then paces back and forth, muttering, "Too slow, too theatrical, needs menace, needs dread." He nearly knocks someone over with a cape flourish. When the doors open, he bows and says, "I'll refine it." Story 153. The girl braiding a stranger's hair. Without asking, a girl walks in, sees another person with long hair, and immediately says, "Ooh, pretty, hold still." Before the person can respond, she starts braiding it. They freeze in shock. The rest of us stare silently as she hums and braids like this is a salon. Doors open. She finishes, pats the newly braided hair, and says, "You're welcome." She leaves. The victim is too stunned to speak. Story 154. The guy testing a fog machine. He steps in with what looks like a metal box with a handle. He presses a button. Fog pours out. Actual thick party fog filling the entire elevator. Someone shouts, "Dude, what?" He grins and says, "Just checking output. My panel needs atmosphere." Everyone coughs. When he gets off, fog spills into the hallway like a horror movie. Story 155. The girl doing ASMR into her phone. She's holding her phone up close and whispering things like, "Okay guys, now I'm in this elevator. There are some people in here with me. The energy is chaotic. We're going to tap on this button for relaxation." She taps the elevator buttons, softly, repeatedly. Someone says, "Please stop touching all the buttons." She whispers, "Rude energy detected." Story 156. The dude testing out his magical staff's sound effects. He has a giant prop staff with a speaker inside. He presses buttons on the handle and it makes revving noises, laser blasts, thunder cracks, anime transformation chimes, one mooing sound for some reason. Each sound is insanely loud in the tiny elevator. He nods seriously and says, "Yeah, that's the one." Nobody knows which one he meant. Story 157. The guy chanting in a foreign language. He steps in, presses his floor, and immediately starts chanting, in what sounded like Spanish. He's sweating. He's tense. Someone asks, what are you doing?" He pants, "Keeping the demons away." Doors open on his floor. He leaves mid-count. Everyone else stands there silently. Story 158. The girl who pretended gravity didn't apply to her. She steps in, spreads her arms, and announces, "I float now." She then tiptoes around the elevator like she's levitating, making soft whoosh sounds. Every time the elevator moved, she said, "Ah, yes, the cosmic current." Nobody questioned it. Story 159. The guy who stared at the ceiling the entire time. He doesn't look down, doesn't look at anyone, just stares straight up at the ceiling panel with unbroken intensity. He whispers once, "It's different today." Nobody knows what it is. He gets off without ever lowering his head. Story 160. The girl who tried to measure the air. She has one of those tiny handheld air quality meters. She walks in, holds it up, and mutters, Elevated CO2, fascinating." Then she walks around, pressing it near people, nodding like a scientist documenting rare phenomena. Someone says, "Are we okay?" She just says, "We'll see," and leaves. Story 161. The guy who pretended the elevator was a time machine. He steps inside and loudly declares, "Year 3025, planet, reclaimed Earth." Nobody reacts. He nods solemnly and continues narrating the mission logs of his fictional space rebellion. When the doors open, he salutes the group and says, "Remember the resistance," then steps out, like he just returned to his home timeline. Story 162. The girl who gave everyone their theme song. She pulls out her phone and starts playing different short songs while looking people up and down. Then she points and says things like, This is your theme song. You're welcome." One person gets epic battle music. Another gets elevator jazz. Someone else gets a clown horn honk loop. She doesn't explain. She doesn't justify. She just nods and leaves. Story 163. The guy practicing his evil finger tapping. He stands in the corner, hands steepled like a cartoon villain, tapping his fingers together rhythmically. Tap, 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 tap. Over and over. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" He stops, looks at them dead serious, and says, "I will know when the moment arrives." The doors open. He exits. Finger tapping resumes in the hallway. Story 164. The girl who kept saying soon. She steps in and every 10 seconds softly says, "Soon." Someone nervously asks, "Soon what?" She looks at them and says, "Soon." No further details. She steps off on floor 9. Says, "Soon," one last time. Doors close. Everyone question marks. Story 165. The guy acting like he was filming a nature documentary. He holds his phone sideways, points it at everyone, and narrates in a fake British accent. Here we see the con-goer in their natural habitat. Notice their cautious demeanor. Truly a fascinating species. Someone says, "Dude, stop." He whispers dramatically, and when threatened, they respond with irritation. He gets off on the next floor like David Attenborough after a long day. Story 166. The girl who tried to balance random objects. She has a bag of small items, pens, dice, keychains, snacks. Every stop, she tries to balance one new item on the elevator rail. A pencil, a tiny plush, a bag of chips. Whenever it falls, she sighs deeply, picks it up, and tries something heavier. On her floor, she says, "This environment is unstable," and leaves. Story 167. The guy who tried to guess people's birth order. He walks in, looks everyone up and down, and says, "Let me guess. Oldest child, middle child, only child, youngest but acts like a middle." People stare. Someone says, "No, that's wrong." He nods thoughtfully and says, "Birth order deception. Interesting." He exits like he discovered a conspiracy. Story 168. The guy with a 6-foot inflatable shark. A guy walks in wrestling a giant inflatable shark the size of a full sofa. It barely fits. Its tail keeps poking people in the ribs. Someone asks, "Why do you have that?" He shrugs and says, "It's my emotional support fish." The shark smacks the close button 3 times before we reach the next floor. Story 169. The girl dragging a mannequin. She steps onto the elevator dragging a full-size plastic mannequin by the ankle. Its arm smacks the doorframe on the way in. Someone asks, "What's that for?" She says, "Roommate, helps with costume fitting." She props it upright in the corner. Its dead plastic eyes stare at all of us the whole ride. Story 170. The guy with a full drum set piece. He wheels a snare drum and stands into the elevator like he's late for band practice. The doors close and he taps it lightly with drumsticks to test acoustics. Someone pleads, "Please don't do that in here." He says, "One tap won't kill anybody." It might. The story 171. The girl carrying a bunch of live plants. She steps in with 5 potted plants stacked in her arms like an indoor garden on the move. Soil spilling, leaves brushing people's faces. Someone says, "Why bring those?" She answers, "They're part of my cosplay." Someone else mutters, "As who?" "Mother Nature." She nods proudly. Story 172. The guy with a full-size treasure chest. Yes, a pirate cosplay chest. Wooden, metal hinges, heavy as regret. He drags it in with both hands. It thuds loudly on the elevator floor. Someone asks, "Anything in it?" He grins. "Secrets." The chest shifts every time the elevator stops, like it's alive. Story 173. The girl with a rolling clothes rack. She has an actual garment rack like from a dressing room, wheels squeaking, hangers rattling, cosplays swinging like wind chimes. She tries to angle it inside and blocks half the door. Someone says, "You sure this fits?" She says, "We'll make it fit." The rack disagrees. Story 174. The guy carrying an industrial leaf blower. A man in cargo shorts steps into the elevator holding a full-sized industrial leaf blower, the kind landscapers use that sounds like a jet engine. Someone stares at it and asks, "Why do you have that?" He says, totally serious. "For my photo shoot." The elevator rattles as he adjusts his grip, pointing the nozzle at the floor like a weapon. Someone nervously asks, "You're not going to turn it on, right?" He grins like he's been waiting for the question. "I could." Everyone presses against the walls like he's holding a tactical nuke. The second the doors open on his floor, he says, "Time to make drama happen," and marches out like he's about to blow half the hallway away. Story 175. The girl with a giant anime body pillow. Explicit artwork turned inward. She walks in hugging a massive body pillow, artwork hidden facing her chest. She says, "Don't look at her. She's shy." The pillow is the size of another passenger, not shy at all. Story 176. The guy with a full DJ setup. He has a laptop, a mixer, 2 portable speakers, a tangle of cables. He sets the speakers down, blocking the doorway. Someone says, "Please tell me you're not DJing in here." He answers, "Only if the vibe demands it." It does not. Story 177. The girl with a cooler full of melted ice. She drags in a full camping cooler that sloshes ominously. Water leaks from the corner. Someone says, "Hey, that's spilling." She says, "It's fine. It's just ice water and regret." She leaves a wet trail behind her when she steps off. Story 178. The guy carrying a 3-tier chocolate fountain. He has a running chocolate fountain in his arms, running, chocolate, dripping, flowing. Someone screams, "Turn it off!" He answers calmly, "I can't. It takes 20 minutes to reset." Chocolate splashes onto someone's shoe when the elevator bumps. A tragedy for the ages. Story 179. The guy carrying a taxidermy raccoon. He steps in holding a full-sized taxidermy raccoon posed mid-snarl. Someone says, "Is that real?" He nods and says, "His name's Sheriff." The raccoon stares into everyone's soul, the whole ride. Story 180. The girl with a stack of old CRT TVs. She wheels in a cart with 3 vintage CRT televisions stacked on top of each other. The cart barely fits. Someone asks, "Why, that many?" She says, "My panel is on analog horror." One of the TVs turns on for a split second, static only, immediately turns off. Nobody breathes until she gets out. Story 181. The guy holding a medieval shield bigger than him. A cosplayer drags in a massive wooden shield taller than his whole body. He props it up against the wall. The shield slowly tips forward every time the elevator stops, like it wants to crush someone. He keeps saying, "Just hold on, almost to my floor." Everyone is praying. Story 182. The woman with a bird cage full of action figures. She steps in holding a dainty metal bird cage, the Victorian kind, but inside are tiny anime action figures posed dramatically. Someone asks, "Why a bird cage?" She smiles. They behave better this way. She strokes the cage. The figures rattle. Story 183. The guy transporting a fake coffin. He's dragging a full-size cosplay coffin made of foam and PVC pipes. It barely squeezes in. The doors almost crush it. Someone nervously jokes, "Who's in there?" He says, "No spoilers, no further explanation." Story 184. The girl with a bag of 300 rubber ducks. She steps on carrying a giant mesh sack filled with hundreds of rubber ducks. They squeak every time she moves. Someone asks, "Why so many ducks?" She shrugs. They travel better in packs. One duck slips out and rolls across the floor. She doesn't pick it up. Story 185. The Guy with a Metal Detector. He walks in swinging a metal detector around as if searching for pirate treasure. Every time it beeps, which is constant, he mutters, "Suspicious, very suspicious." Someone asks, "Why here?" He answers, "I'm calibrating." The beeps haunt everyone. Story 186. The girl carrying a life-sized cardboard cutout. She brings in a full 6-foot cardboard cutout of an anime villain. She hugs it protectively as people squeeze around it. Someone says, "That's a lot." She whispers to the cutout, "Don't listen. They're jealous." The cutout blocks half the elevator like an uninvited guest. Story 187. The dude with a box labeled "Worms, Live." He steps in holding a suspicious cardboard box with marker writing, "Worms, Live." Someone gulps and says, "Are those literal worms?" He nods casually. "For composting, eco-friendly." The box shifts slightly. Everyone shifts away a lot. Story 188. The girl with a giant award trophy taller than her. She carries a trophy bigger than she is, with gold wings and a cup the size of a popcorn bucket. It wobbles dangerously as she tries to keep it upright. Someone asks, "What did you win?" She says, "Third place," which raises many more questions. Story 189. The Guy with a Bagpipe Set. He steps in with a full set of Scottish bagpipes draped over his shoulder. Someone asks, "You're not going to play that, right?" He smiles. "Not unless asked." Nobody asks. He looks disappointed. Story 190. The Guy Testing. Every ringtone ever made. He steps in holding his phone like a scientist and starts scrolling through every ringtone at full volume. Duck quacks, classic Nokia, sci-fi alarms, a baby crying, a foghorn, something that sounded like a demon coughing. He says, "I'm trying to pick a new text tone." Everyone begs him to stop. He doesn't. Story 191. The girl with a pocket full of maracas. She has 2 maracas in her hoodie pocket. The problem? She dances a little every time the elevator moves, so the maracas shake, loud. She says, "Sorry, I can't stand still when I hear elevator music." There is no elevator music. Story 192. The guy tapping his metal water bottle like a drum. He's got a giant stainless steel water bottle, and for some reason, he drums on it with his fingers nonstop. Ping, 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 ping. Someone says, "Can you not?" He nods. Keeps drumming. He gets off on floor 9 still tapping like a percussion gremlin. Story 193. The girl playing a harmonica badly. She steps in, pulls out a harmonica, and starts blowing random notes like a confused train whistle. No rhythm, no melody, just chaos. Someone asks, "Do you know how to play?" She shrugs. Not yet. She keeps trying. Everyone suffers. Story 194. The guy beatboxing against the elevator wall. He puts one hand on the wall, angles his head like he's in a music studio, and starts beatboxing, loud, wet, intense. Someone says, "Dude, please." He says, "I'm practicing echo techniques." Story 195. The girl watching anime fights without headphones, phone volume at max. Anime characters screaming, punches, explosions, someone yelling "Nani" every 10 seconds. She laughs loudly and says, "This is the best episode ever." Everyone else considers leaping out between floors. Story 196. The guy with the Bluetooth speaker that won't stop connecting. His Bluetooth speaker keeps making the pairing noise. Do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do. Over and over. He mutters, "Why won't it sync? Why won't it sync?" Someone finally says, "Turn it off." He says, "It is off." The speaker says, "Bluetooth connected. Everyone dies inside. Story 197, the girl screaming every time the elevator moves. The elevator starts rising, she screams. Floor ding, screams. Person coughs, screams, not terrified, just dramatic. Finally, someone asks, "Are you okay?" She cheerfully says, "Oh, I'm fine. I just like expressing myself." Ding. She screams again. Story 198. The guy with the squeaky shoes. Every step he takes. Squeak, squeak, squonk. He keeps shifting his weight nervously. More squeaks. Someone whispers, "Please, please stand still." He tries. The shoes squeak anyway. He mutters, "They weren't this loud downstairs." Story 199. The girl practicing her anime power-up scream. She looks normal until the elevator starts moving. Then she inhales deeply and starts screaming like she's transforming. Everyone jumps. She stops when the elevator stops, then starts again when it moves. Someone says, "Why?" She says, "I have a competition. I have to warm up. Everyone else has hearing damage." Story 200. The guy with the hand crank siren. Yes. A hand crank emergency siren like from old movies. He steps in, sets it down, and says, "Don't worry, I'm just testing it." Someone says, "Don't you dare." He cranks it once. The entire elevator nearly explodes with sound. People scream. Someone drops their bag. Someone else hits the wall. He smiles calmly as he picks it up. Yep, works fine. He leaves. Nobody recovers. Hope you enjoyed today's chaos. I'll be back with more paranormal encounters and more con disasters very soon.